like every transitions in life, uh, there's always some confusion before things becomes clear enough to how to orient yourself. And today, or yesterday, I'm gonna start there. I didn't notice that I didn't know or remember that the way I held my phone was not picking up the words. So today, and I was talking for about 45 minutes yesterday, and I felt like I was on a roll with it, what I was talking about, and so I felt a little disappointed because I felt like there was some intelligibility, at least for myself, and of course I wanted to share it also with people who might be interested in what I'm trying to speak about. So, starting all over again, but the usefulness of my walk and talk yesterday it kind of sparked something or a perspective that I wasn't aware of yesterday. So it was for me useful to do that exercise of walking and speaking about things that is interesting for me. So I'm gonna give it another shot, and I hope this. I'm using this stick, like this extension stick that is probably better to not interfere with the microphone on the phone. So I'm gonna start out by naming two books that I'm deeply involved with these days. I'm gonna try to make this as concrete as I can, as possible for me to do. And I'm gonna start. Yeah, the two books is a guy called Ryan Dunns, who is a Jesuit priest, and he has quite not long ago written a book called Spiritual Exercises, and it's a gem of a book. He lays out I haven't gotten far into it, I must say, so this is my initial response to what I've read so far. But he starts up by using a metaphor that he calls the coral. But before I go into that, I'm gonna also say that I'm also more and more influenced by especially Thomas More, who writes a lot about the soul. I think he has written 36 books by now, or something. And he's also, I think he was a colleague of James Hillman, who is kind of who's heavily influenced by Jung. But the book that's really caught is catching my interest is a book called this is a very noisy area. I'm gonna turn. But the book is called The Practice of Ally Work. My words doesn't work very well today. Very well. It was really flowing yesterday. Okay.
Lap 1, 22:05.
My watch comes on. This is gonna be a bad episode of the movie standpoint episode. Podcast did go. Oh my god. Yeah. But maybe it will. Maybe it will become better at some point. Hopefully. Yeah, so my interest nowadays is this book by Ryan Dunn's Spiritual Exercises, and this other book, The Practice of Ally Work. And to say the least, it's the practice of ally work is deeply imaginal in the Henry Corbin sense of the word, imaginal. And what strikes me also, what's common for both of these books is the imaginal. And this is not flowing yet. Maybe it never will flow, but I'm gonna continue. So the way, yeah, I'm gonna choose where to focus my attention first. I think I'm gonna go with Ryan Dunn's book first. And maybe I mix in some Norwegian language propositions. But I think I'm gonna start like where my yeah, there's so many entrants to this, but I'm gonna start with my a course I took on the lectern platform that Verveke is kind of founder of. Among other, a whole team of people who are involved with the lectern courses. So I took a course called Realizing the Imaginal. Yeah, that's a good entrance point, I think. Maybe make this a little more coherent. Hopefully. Hopefully. But, oh, look at the leaves. Beautiful leaves. Wow. I always want to rub my feet in it, like I did when I was young. Rubbing my feet in the leaf and the fall. Everything is falling. Yeah. So, the course Realizing the Imaginal is about realizing the imaginal. It started out with a very rigorous cognitive 4E cognitive science to lay the groundwork for the more esoteric stuff that so it has a very I can say modern scientific, not reductionist like scientific things, but in the more holistic, how basically how the mind or the brain works. So quite early on, after being introduced by how predictive processing and relevance realization is how that helps to make sense of what's going on when we have basically how our brain works to make sense of the world, and how we can without thinking of it, we can see what's relevant in a situation we find ourselves in. Of course, this is also an ability that we can cultivate. So, starting off from cognitive science in a very rigorous way, I didn't follow. It's my being dominated by my right hemisphere is not very useful when you're trying to read technical stuff. It's hard for me to follow, basically. But I think I got the gist of it. How predictive processing, if I remember and are able to explain that, is how our mind or our brain, I'm not sure about the distinction there, I'm gonna go with the mind, how our minds is constantly trying to predict our next step or what's gonna happen. So maybe to boil this down to the situation I found myself in. If I was to think about every step that I'm taking walking this road, it will be impossible. So when we do stuff automatically, that's the. I think it's fair to say that our mind has to predict what's coming next, so we can repeat that pattern without sitting down and contemplating every step of the way, so to speak. Or making a plan for the next step, like when we walk around and wander around. So we have a lot of, and of course, it's not criticism of that. We have to have a certain amount of predictive processing going on, so we can automatize our behavior. And all things is, we can automatize so much in our lives. Our conversation, we have kind of a predictive way of being. We have norms that laws that governs our behavior, and all this stuff that's useful. But when you find ourselves, and that's like routines, is kind of a predictive processing going on in the background in your mind, our minds. So, and I want to call this one mode of being. So, that's some groundwork from 4E cognitive science. And I'm gonna also mention one other thing. The concept is not a concept. It's I'm gonna just go with what it's called. What's relevance realization. What is that? What does Verweke mean by relevance realization? And maybe I'm gonna try to make an example. Okay. Oh, this upward hill is quite exhausting. It's a very steep hill. Whew. So right now, realizing the steepness of this hill, I might slow down. So I'm realizing that the pace, I feel like this is a really bad example. I'm trying to work with what's right in front of me. what I'm present to right now. Okay, I'm gonna start again. The central point of how we are connected to the world, our connectedness to the world, is, in my mind, is what we can realize. This is again a poor example. And where I'm walking is not very affordable to speak about this. But now I'm noticing. So I'm really realizing that. So I think I'm gonna go back and try to use some other words that might be helpful, maybe simpler. I'm not sure how it's gonna go, but I okay, I'm gonna catch my breath before I start. That hill was really
Lap 2, 1607.
lap 2. Why is this happening? I'm gonna turn that off at some point. But okay. So I'm gonna take it not so far away from my own experiences. It's a certain risk to go into concepts. It creates more distance from my more like embodied experience of stuff. So maybe it's helpful to start with the term orientation. And the phenomenology or the lived experience of orientation is very simple. Of course, it's very complex if you go into theory about it, but how we can orient ourselves in our daily lives is a way to do this, and we are doing it all the time. And maybe without noticing, because we have automatized different procedures. They're gonna go to work in a car and walk or bicycle. And we just do this because it's effective and we're used to it. A lot of predictive processing is going on in the background. And if it doesn't happen, if something like our bike breaks down, or we get a flat tire or something, then the mind tries to reduce the error signal that happened. So the mind's work, so to speak, is to make things predictable and thereby manageable. So we can proceed. And to reference Iain McGilchrist's work here, is the left hemisphere's job to do this, most like to generalize it. The left hemisphere loves that what it can predict and have it like in linear fashion. Like when we make plans, there's also, it's a really nice country side here. So, but in all our automatized behaviors on all levels, like bureaucracy is also a kind of automized, my words. It's ironic. My words is not automatized today. They're not flowing. It's unpredictable. So I guess probably my left hemisphere is not very flowing. So going back to the concreteness, so when things happen that we can't predict, that our mind register as what the hell is going on, like I just changed this tire and now it's flat again, as an example. Then if you scale this up, it's referencing again Iain McGilchrist's work. our whole Western society is built mostly from the left hemisphere. Everything that's effective, controllable, things we can manipulate by means of technology, for instance, or machines, everything that's more productive is the left hemisphere work. So it's brought us here where we are today in our Western society. I'm trying to accept my incoherence of this episode. So to talk about the other side of this coin of productivity, there's good evidence, huge evidence and research that is trying to address the importance of the right hemisphere. That's connected to emotions and actually also what is often referred to in different terms to the sacredness. Okay. And it also has a flair to it, or a tone that is more oriented towards art and the more esoteric aspects of reality. So and of course this is not an either or. These two hemispheres is connected to each other. And when it's really working, so to speak, in this harmony together, we can, if they're lighting up together by something you do, maybe you're into kind of a fruitful conversation, or reading a engaging book, or doing some artwork, or you're out walking, you can find yourself in a flow state. And the flow state is a place, or it's a state that you can, when you forget what you're actually doing and you're just going with it, and it seems effortless, and new ideas tends to show up. And suddenly you find yourself in a transition from one state to another. And then I think it's relevant to draw from the relevance realization. In the flow state, you can find something you can kind of start to realize that things might be working out in the way you couldn't predict it, that the left hemisphere couldn't have foreseen. And then another procedure, another way of being can be vivid in your imagination. And you can start to deepen into what you're engaged with. So, and when things becomes vivid, to throw in another term, things become more salient in the flow state. That it's more vivid when vividness comes true, or yeah, I'm not sure how to speak about that, but imagine you get the meaning of vividness. So what's going on there in that state of flow is that the term that occurs for me is salience landscaping, and that your mind is making new connections.
Lap 3, 1553.
That it's making more connections than it's something that occurred for you that's not important and maybe not very understandable, or maybe not interesting. Suddenly you can realize something. When I say you, I mean the background processes. That our mind just does for us. So when these processes is occurring and makes our perception, outward perception, more relevant in a situation we find ourselves in, we start to experience the world differently. and and yeah, I think this is a little more coherent than where I started at. So we have the two hemispheres that is connected, but have different qualities to them. And when they're really working together, we can get into a flow state where things become more salient, that is kind of shining up for us in what we're doing, when we kind of we forget about the appearance of things, that we're not very like we're not concerned about outcomes, but we're kind of just running with it, whatever we're doing, if we're reading or writing or doing laundry, or we're just doing it, and it feels effortlessly, and we are present. That's another quality of flow state also. We feel very present to what we're doing. There's also something that also can happen when we're in that state. There's also can be a felt sense of the time, like how we it can kind of, oh, I thought we were talking for 10 minutes, but it's been an hour already. So you can get the sense, to scale it up, of eternity in that state of flow. So I think I'm gonna move on from trying to grapple with this cognitive science. That's really hard for me to grapple with. I hope some of this made sense for you. So I'm reading 2 books mostly these days, and one of them is Ryan Dunn's Spiritual Exercises, where he's trying to highlight and make vivid the what modernity has is kind of lost the sense of. So by using metaphors in this pointing at modernity and the modern subject, this becomes very noisy. I'm gonna turn it up. Okay, let's try again. The noise of the modernity caught up with me. So relevance is trying to point to how modernity created a construct of a human, or of a human being that's not very human-like in a way. And how he's doing that makes it very vivid. And he starts out by using the metaphor of a coral domain that's, I think the original sense of the coral is how to keep the animals enclosed, and this is a metaphor, so it's not about animals in a way, but he uses this metaphor to speak about how modernity creates what he refers to by Charles Taylor's notion of the buffered self. And where we kind of have conformed to, as modern subjects, the morality of obligation, that we are obligated to be a part of this modern construct that's not very hospitable to a sense of goodness, for instance, or a sense of the sacred. So by opening up by using this metaphor, he uses, or he does a mix with our hemispheres, to put it in a very bluntly and general way. He uses metaphors to engage our imagination, and thereby triggering our right hemisphere. And then he goes into more rigorous, more kind of quote-unquote technical terms, and explaining what he does, and thereby triggering our more sense-making and logical hemisphere. And it's interesting because right now, I haven't framed this in this way. I haven't seen it as vivid as I was just speaking to. So I guess right now I triggered my own relevance realization by using the work of Iain McGilchrist and referencing that, and then I became more aware and realized what is to zoom out from, how he's speaking about things and the content of the book, but what he's actually doing. And then I also realized, having said this, that his title of Spiritual Exercises is very appropriate, because what he's doing in this book is precisely that, triggering logical thinking and triggering our imagination. So it thereby becomes very engaging, because that's kind of how we get into this flow state. And I'm noticing that my pace is picking up and things are starting to excite me. So, and I notice also this is interesting. I might sound like a crazy person, and probably I hope it's a good kind of insanity. I think that's where my our creative sparks comes from. Is that sense of like just running with it. I feel a little liberated from my own worry about, this is not gonna be coherent and all this shit. And now I realized that it feels like an insight, that I'm seeing this so vividly right now, that what it's actually doing in this book, and leaning on Charles Taylor's explanation of the modern subject, and using metaphors and constantly going back to the metaphor.
Lap 4, 1440.
My suspicion is that he's trying to pull the reader of this book out into the open by dialoguing with Charles Taylor, and for to come also the works of William Desmond, that talks about the metaphysical philosophy, the metaxo, and the metaxo is the betweenness of being. Is very uses Heidegger, and Plato talked also about this metaxo, that's the betweenness of being. That we're always in between, like there's a betweenness. Yeah. It's not very clear for me right now what this means, but yeah, I think I can say that in for some time ago, before things sparked, and I find myself into this flow state where my words didn't work, but my will of grappling with what I was trying to speak about was kind of in a between place, where things didn't flow and things didn't go as I wanted to go, and I was caught up by my left hemisphere that wasn't connected to the like, it was just trying to do stuff and trying to control what I was saying and stuff like that, but it didn't work. But suddenly in the between something sparked when I realized that in this book, what is in my perception, what is it doing? And then things started to make sense for me. But I didn't plan this. I didn't plan to. I didn't plan to talk about Iain McGilchrist, but it showed up for me after I talked about trying to talk about cognitive science, the predictive processing, because it's connected. They're very connected. This neuroscience of the hemispheres and the predictive processing, the relevance realization. They're intertwined. So when this showed up, and my interest for Ryan Dunn's works, he is doing a spiritual exercise for the reader, because he uses metaphors, speaks to the right hemisphere and our imagination and the sense of and emotions. And then in a very he also mentions Narnia, like how we as kids is really open for playing with our imagination, and we build our whole worlds. So it's beautiful laid out, and he uses that kind of, I want to say childlike way and playing with images. Yeah, the images he paints through our imagination, it becomes very vivid. And then he goes on to explain how the metaphor works, and makes it very, very he makes it rigorous by logic, by explaining. So it does both of these things, and it goes back and kind of he uses the same metaphors, and it's kind of making things really hard, or like the more technical aspect of his explanations is very at least for me, quite difficult to do or to follow, because my English is not my native language, so I have to look them up, like the words. So it's really a work, but yeah. So I just want to say how much reading this reading is working on my mind, and I'm getting more and more engaged, because how he does this. So yeah, I think I reached something that that is speaking to me, and maybe for you. I think I will frame this as a betweenness and a transition from being stuck with my left hemisphere and transitioning into a more flow state where, because I managed to grapple with this just long enough so it could become more vivid to what I was trying to speak about. And I feel quite exhausted right now, but also there's a slight sense of satisfaction in by doing this. Of course, I could have just given up when I felt stuck in this mode of trying and not being very coherent, because I was trying too hard. So that's also a realization that is useful to be more aware of when we're trying too hard and it just doesn't sit right in the felt sense of it. It's so I can also say that I really deeply, highly recommend this book by Ryan Dunn, Spiritual Exercises, where he's trying to shine a light on us, on all of us as modern subjects, and being in the corral, and the possibility of being liberated from it into the field, so to speak, into the field of being with beings, to savor our humanity and getting out of our automatic mechanical behaviors and ways of being. So if you listen through all of this, I'm really impressed by your patience, and this was really interesting for me. So I hope that you got something out of this. And now I'm gonna take my walking sticks and focus on my feet again.